welcome to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast, Achieving Peace Through Compassion. This podcast is a recording of the Dharma Talks given during our Sunday service.
Hello, I'm Daniel, and I'm going to tell you the life story of the Buddha today. And I'm going to kind of highlight the parts that I think are the most interesting to talk about, but we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. So, the figure that we call the Buddha, his name was Siddhartha, and he was born around 2,500 years ago. And I'm going to take a moment to tell you about his parents, and then move on. So, his father was Suddhodana, and his mother was Mahamaya, okay? And usually we just talk about his father. His mother passed away shortly after he was born, okay? And I tend to think that he carried that tragedy around with him. But who knows, of course. So, Suddhodana, who we are told he was a king, so I always have imagined a Disney castle. It probably wasn't like that, but the point is that his parents, Siddhartha's parents, were wealthy and powerful. Okay? That's the point. We don't need to get hung up on kings and queens and that kind of stuff. But this is what happened. Suddhodana found out his wife was pregnant, and they went to a fortune teller, which was a very common thing in those days. They went to a fortune teller, and Suddhodana, he goes and he asks the fortune teller, what's going to happen to my son? Okay, what's going to happen to my son? And the fortune teller says, your son will either be a great king, a great world leader, or he will be a great spiritual teacher that changes many lives. So, Suddhodana hears this, and he thinks what thousands of parents have thought when their kids say, I'm going to art school. You know what that is? I don't want my son to be poor. I don't want my son to be poor. That's what Suddhodana thinks. So he comes up with this idea. And the idea is he's going to give his son absolutely everything. He's going to make his son so happy that the concept of looking for something else out of life, looking for spiritual teachings, it's never going to occur to Siddhartha because he's going to have everything. He's going to be so happy. And that will lead him to being a great ruler. Suddhodana wasn't worried about spoiling his kid, which is something we hear about these days. Probably people weren't worried about that in that time and place. And, I've always thought spoiling your kid is kind of a weird concept because I think life's hard enough. We can make it easy when they're kids. But that's just me. So, Suddhodana creates a perfect life for his son, or he tries to. I'm imagining that Jay-Z song, Young Forever. You all know it, I'm sure. He says, we're living life like a video where the sun is always out and you never get old and the champagne's always cold and the music's always good and the pretty girls just happen to stop by in the hood. Right? We all know that song, right? So you knew that lyric. So that's the kind of world that Suddhodana is trying to create for his son. Okay? So little Siddhartha is growing up with all the best toys, whatever toys were available back then. They didn't have Xboxes and iPhones, obviously. But he's growing up with all the best toys, all his favorite food all the time, the best friends, people want to be his friend anyway because of who he is, but also people are encouraged to be his friends and be cool to him. And then as he gets older, the best women are made available to him as well. Everybody wants to spend time with him. Everybody wants to hang out with him. He's got a pretty good life, okay? So Siddhartha grows up in this environment where his life is designed to be perfect. And he has an arranged marriage. He has a kid. And one day he thinks there's got to be more to life. He realizes that he knows life in the palace, and he does not really know life outside of the palace. He does not really know the real world or how other people live. So, Siddhartha, now an adult, he gets a servant of his, a chariot driver, to take him out of the palace and to go to a local village because he wants to see what life is like for other people. And this is the part of the story where Siddhartha sees what we call the four sights. And when he sees the four sights, this inspires him to change the way he's living. And I'm going to tell you what the four sights are, and then I'm going to comment on the four sights. Okay? So, because I think I have something to say about the four sights, but I'm going to go through them one by one, and then we'll talk about them. So, and again, this is how the story is traditionally told. So the Buddha and his servant, I might slip up sometimes. His name's not the Buddha yet. The Buddha's a title that's used after he attained enlightenment. And I might mess up sometimes and call him the Buddha, but he is Siddhartha. He's not the Buddha yet, but this is his journey to be there. So he's out there with his servant, his friend, really, and just seeing what's around. And so first, he sees a sick person. And I imagine like somebody with leprosy or some horrifying illness that is easy to spot from far away. I imagine someone with that. I don't imagine someone with a cold, obviously. But he sees a sick person. And he's surprised. And he says he's never seen this before. And he asks the guy with him, his friend, he says, "Hey, what's that?" And his friend says, "That's a sick person. Everyone gets sick." Okay? And Siddhartha hears this and he's shocked. So they keep going through the village and they see an old person. And, I imagine like somebody with gray hair walking with a cane or something like that, but who knows? But Siddhartha says to his friend, what's going on here? And his friend says, "Oh, that's an elderly person. That's an old person. Everyone gets old." And again, Siddhartha is deeply shocked and shaken by this. He's not been told about old age. And then they come across a dead body in the street. And again, this is not something that's been part of Siddhartha's experience. So he asks his friend, he says, "What's that?" And his friend says, "That's a dead person. Eventually, everyone dies." And again, Siddhartha is shaken to the core because he didn't know about this. And then finally, they come across some yogis, some spiritual people. And they see some men who look like they have nothing, but they also look like they're joyful. Okay? They look like they have nothing, but they also appear to be joyful. And again, Siddhartha asks his friend, he says, "Hey, what's going on with those guys?" And his friend tells him, "Oh, those are people looking for spirituality. They're looking for the meaning of life. They're trying to attain enlightenment." So the story goes that Siddhartha saw these four things and he resolved to change his life. He walked away from the palace and went to live in the forest and try to practice spirituality, tried to become a yogi. This is a fundamental part of his journey. But I'm going to talk about the first three of those four sites, because I want you to know that this story, when I first read it, it didn't really sit right with me. I'm going to tell you my own interpretation. So, because I think Siddhartha may have had some awareness of these things, but just not a complete awareness. So, I'll go through them. So he sees a sick person, right? I don't believe Siddhartha never got a cold. I don't believe Siddhartha did not know what illness was, but I do believe that what he had never experienced was seeing someone without medical care. Seeing someone without medical care. And I'm going to express the other two sites in a similar way as well. What Siddhartha had not seen in his life was a poor person. What he was sheltered from was poor people and the way they live, okay? So he had never seen a sick person not getting medical care. And then when he saw the old person, what did he see? He certainly knew about aging. If nothing else, he saw his father getting older, right? If nothing else, he saw that. So what he did not see, though, was an old person not getting any help. An old person not getting any help without the comforts of palace life, right? He did not see someone aging, getting into old age without having the dignity of some help. He saw an old person alone. And then he saw a dead body. And again, are we really to believe he had never seen a dead body before? Maybe not a dead person, but certainly if he lost a pet, he was told that old lie, your dog went to live on a farm, right? We've heard that one before. But certainly he saw dead bugs or something, right? So I think that here in the modern world, we have a very sanitized view of death, and I think maybe he did too. So if you've ever seen a dead body at a funeral and also seen a dead body not at a funeral, you know that that can be a very different thing. I'll never forget at my dad's funeral, they really worked hard to make him look like he was sleeping, right? So here the Buddha, the soon-to-be Buddha, Siddhartha, he sees a dead person who's just in the street, maybe rotting and gross, I don't know, but a dead person who's just in the street. Maybe they just died there and they were left there. And that is far outside of his experience. So in seeing these things, he's seeing a world, an entire world that he was unaware of. And he's learning that the world he's been dwelling in is not the real world. There's been a lot of illusion. And you know, we can all take a lesson from this, actually. I was, because my dad had a good union job, he was able to elevate himself from lower class to middle class, and therefore to elevate me from lower class to middle class. And I'm sharing that with you just to tell you that a whole lot of people have life experiences that are outside the range of my experience. And I'm learning every day, and we're all learning every day what other people experience because of the different ways that maybe we've been sheltered, maybe we've been protected in our lives. So there's a lot of people's life experience that I'm not familiar with because I grew up middle class in the suburbs, right? And so I kind of think Siddhartha, he had maybe more extreme, but he had that kind of experience too, just to realize that, oh, this is not what life is for almost everyone, does not live the way I live. So, Siddhartha goes, and he leaves the palace behind, and he goes to live in the forest, abandons everything, which seems like a really hard thing to do, but that's what he does. And he goes and he studies with some great spiritual teachers of the day, and he learns meditation and yoga and probably some other things too. And he comes to realize that these things are not giving him what he's looking for. He's looking for deep spiritual truth. He's looking to really learn about the human condition and the world and our place in it, okay? And he's not finding that. So he tries what we call asceticism. So he gets a group of 5 friends together, and they go and they try to practice essentially empowering the mind by starving the body. So they try various kinds of not eating, or not wearing clothes, or standing for hours and hours at a time, or not sleeping. They try what we think of as horrible things to do to themselves with the idea that that's going to awaken their minds. And Siddhartha ultimately, he ditched those guys because he realized that wasn't doing it for him either. Not eating was just making him think about food all the time, right? So, asceticism didn't work either. So he goes and he sits under a tree. We call this tree the Bodhi tree. Its official name is Ficus religiosa, which I think is kind of cool. And he's decided that he thinks the truth is probably within himself. So what he needs to do is get quiet and just sit and try to figure things out. So that's what he does. And he does this for a very long time. And it is, at this point in the story, it has been 6 years since he left the palace. Okay? So there he is sitting under that tree. And now a figure comes into the story, and we call this figure Mara. And Mara is like a personification of evil. Not really evil saying a bit much, but Mara is, I imagine, the devil, but probably we shouldn't imagine Mara looking like that, but it doesn't matter. For the purposes of this story, we don't need to know if Mara is a literal being or a figure that the soon-to-be Buddha is imagining, okay? So if you have trouble thinking of Mara as a literal being, that's okay, because it could be Siddhartha's imagination conjuring this. Okay, so this figure Mara appears, and Mara's intention and motivation is to get Siddhartha to stop his spiritual journey. Okay, so first, Mara conjures an army of monsters. And these monsters are meant to scare Siddhartha to get him to get up from under that tree. Okay? So monsters appear. And I imagine like Dracula and vampires and things, but imagine whatever you like. So Siddhartha is unmoved. These monsters are there to scare him. It doesn't work. He's unmoved. So next, Mara conjures beautiful dancing girls. Beautiful dancing girls in front of Siddhartha. And again, this is intended to tempt him to get out from under that tree. But again, Siddhartha is unmoved. This quest is important to him. Okay? So finally, Mara goes up to Siddhartha and he says, "Who the hell do you think you are? You think you're going to find spiritual awakening? You're just some guy. You're not going to find anything. You might as well give up. You might as well give up." And then Siddhartha, he does something. He touches the ground and he says, "I see you, Mara." And Mara disappears. "I see you, Mara," and Mara disappears. And if you see an image of the Buddha where he's touching the ground, that is what this is a reference to. That is a very common image, is the Buddha sitting touching the ground with one hand. He literally and figuratively grounded himself, right? Literally and figuratively, he did the thing that we sometimes need to do when we're stressed out. He grounded himself. And that was it. That was the moment. That was the moment Siddhartha he becomes the Buddha. He attains what we call enlightenment. He saw fundamental truths about life. He saw that the best way to live is a middle way between extremes. So he had tried a life where he indulged himself and gave in to every temptation all the time. And he had tried a life where he denied himself all kinds of pleasure and just was putting himself in suffering all the time. And he realized that neither one of those were really what he wanted. And I find that relatable because I've found in my own life, when I'm really excited and when I'm really sad are the two times when I make the worst decisions. When I'm really excited and when I'm really sad. So middle way, that's something I need. And he realized the teachings that we call the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, and life is suffering. The cause of suffering is attachment. There's a way out of suffering. The way out is the path. And I'm not going to go into all that here, except to say that the Buddha, his first students were those 5 guys. He went to them and told them they could knock off that asceticism and they could practice with him, and they did. And he was around for decades. The Buddha, we were blessed. The Buddha was blessed with a long life. We are blessed that the Buddha had a long life. Some other spiritual teachers, as you know, had shorter lives. He had a long life and was able to give teachings for many years. We are told that he gave 84,000 teachings. 84,000 sounds like a lot. The point is, he was around a long time. He was able to give a lot of teachings. Ultimately, many years later, he ate some spoiled food and he died. He had a kind of a slow, lingering death, but he died from eating spoiled food. So please check your expiration dates. Okay? Please check your expiration dates. And we are told that his longtime assistant and cousin, Ananda, went to his bedside as he was passing away. And Ananda said, "What should we do? Who's going to lead us now?" And the Buddha said, "Carry the teachings with you and be a lamp unto yourselves." Carry the teachings with you and be a lamp unto yourselves. And then Ananda says, "You've given a lot of teachings. Are all the rules you've given us important, or are there some that we can kind of let slide?" And the Buddha said, "Yeah, make sure you stick to the important ones, and the lesser ones you can let slide. Those are less important." Problem is, then the Buddha died. And Ananda, he didn't ask which teachings were the important ones. So that's left to us to figure out, but that's okay, because we are lamps unto ourselves. So, thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. I hope this talk's been helpful, and I love you all.
Thank you for listening to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast. Music was provided by Barefoot Brand Music. Please consider supporting the Rime Buddhist Center by making a donation at our website at www.rimecenter.org/donate.